Hey everybody, it's the Epistemologist here today, and our topic of the day is what happened to the news? It's gone crazy. Kind of expected. I think a lot of political people understand that the news goes crazy right before an election, called the October surprise, the infamous October surprise. But this season has been particularly crazy. And it has never stopped being crazy. It's been crazy essentially the entire year. So we want to talk a little bit more, taking a step back as the epistemologist is trying to do more often than not, and understanding where we are, what we're with, why is the news going this way, that sort of thing. Understanding the mimetic implications and why we do this, why we go crazy. I think right now we're in a time at which there are these, we talk about, I think we've talked about before, the idea of these two universes of discourse, which is kind of, we've been talking about it for a while, but it's kind of coming into mainstream focus that there are that there are really these two different paths that mindsets can take right now between those who, I mean, we could put it in context of Trump, or you can put it in context of a whole bunch of things, but those who want to follow the ideas of America and politics becoming and in some sense remaining the argument of freedom and the sense of individuality and self-sufficiency that America has stood for.
You're describing a complex of memes.
Yes.
It's what we call a memeplex.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Well, there's two basic memeplexes because you have two paradigms
that are in a heated debate sort of thing. Almost, and this debate these memeplexes are arguing for is not to convince one or the other, but rather to convince people to participate and enjoy in it, right? The other side of this debate is in the best of terms, we should be joining the world community. We should be America should step down from its role as the superpower and let others handle it. And join it as a powerful but not supremely powerful nation amongst nations under almost another government. The European Union is a good example of this mentality. Sort of demure for the nations, but the super government is the real wielder of the power. And we do this because the super government that combines all nations, that federalizes all nations, will be the one that can make peace across the world. It's kind of give up your freedoms for the sake of broader peace.
So you're describing the other
memeplex in the best possible terms that I can. I could lambaste it. I could say they're globalists, as Alex Jones would. I could, talk about how it really is a foul plan, because ultimately that federalized government, that super government, is going to be run by people, and governments are not particularly good at remaining clean, at being uncorruptible.
Yeah, well, once you've centralized your control, then all eyes are on that central control. So anyone who wants power, any sociopath will
go to that central control.
And they just go there and they just work out a plan to corrupt it and attack it. And
there's no, it's important to understand there is no system we can design that isn't gameable in some way.
Yeah, because any system that's constructible is deconstructible.
Yeah. And
they're not smart enough to outwit a person.
No.
Unless the system is a person.
But even that person can be outsmarted by other people.
Yeah, and it's really just based on their knowledge. And so
and this
what we want is what we need is people representing the defense.
Yeah, that's where the idea of limited government kind of comes in. The sort of American ideal, the libertarian view. We want to have as small a government as possible. That I think we both sort of agree with in principle, but the government does have its uses, and I think over time we've kind of shifted on that. As I might have alluded to, originally I was much more libertarian, much more small government, but when you deal with a really small government, you're kind of handing power from the government to other communities that are not government owned and you have no stake in, say like a corporation. And a corporation can be just as corrupt and do just as bad things as the government, almost, save for the fact that the government typically holds a monopoly on violence. So, the point of the government, as I see it, is the citizens' monopoly. We grant power of violence over others to the government. And that violence can be, imprisoning them. It can be actual violence. It has that power that the citizenry, have granted to the government, so that it can wield it against citizens who might want to cause harm to others. It can wield it against, other governments that might want to cause harm to you. Yeah. We give it a lot of power for the sake of having a defense against other powers.
I think there is something to be said for a authority being there to settle disputes, being a last line of, someone to make the call.
The thing that has the final say.
Yeah.
Something. I think, and I agree. And I think that it's important, it's critical, in fact, that the citizens have a say in that as well. That ultimately there is a say that citizenry gets that can make it so that the government can't completely fly off the rails, because if everyone has that little bit of voice and that collectively can stop the government from flying off the rails and doing something crazy, then that will be beneficial for everyone involved. Because the government, if it does go off the rails, driven by whoever psychopaths who want power, though the government can't go off the rails, which means that it won't ever go too far, which is kind of the threat and part of the threat that the Second Amendment grants the United States citizens. Our
Constitution does a pretty good job of protecting us against that.
Yeah. And we should be very careful when we try to erode that. And we can get into gun rights as well, but suffice to say, to simplify it, I am for maybe some regulations, some restrictions, but probably not completely.
I think it's important to recognize that there are some circumstances, some cases, where we would need to help someone who just cannot help themselves. There's a lot of times where we might want to care for people. Like, for instance, our youngest individuals sometimes get abandoned.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to care for them as a society.
Well, and it benefits the society as a whole to care for those children who are not being cared for, to care for individuals who are not being cared for. It benefits the society as a whole to care for those people and provide services to them, probably more than the cost of dealing with the repercussions of not caring for them.
And again, I stress that there's a lot of different kinds of care that people need. The kinds that really are key that we need to step up with in the social sense are the people that just do not have capacity to care for themselves at all. They don't have the network. They don't have family, friends, resources, money. They might not even be able to move.
Yeah.
They're people who are in health, bad health. There's all kinds of different situations. And we as a society cannot expect the libertarian corporate model or business model to
It's
accommodate for that. If they're all going to want to negotiate a price that someone can't pay.
right, and it's a brutal model that will that like communism is almost designed to fail. That there is no way that system will work in reality, simply because those who are disenfranchised, who are not good negotiators, will inevitably band together and then force their own negotiation, but instead of the negotiation being, oh, we want money, it will be, we want blood and everything that you own, or we will kill you. And they won't care about the private army that you have. It doesn't matter. No matter how much money you have, it won't matter when an angry mob comes for you. This, by the way, is evidenced by what happens when, in, say, like, the medieval era, there were plenty of peasant riots that would uprisings that would come, and they just kill nobles. And the nobles, they had more rights than you would have as a libertarian to stomp out those rebellions. They had more rights and more power than you would have as a libertarian corporation or whatever to stomp out those rebellions. So that system will probably never work. But fortunately, no psychopath wants to take over that system, so it's probably never going to get off the ground in the first place.
Yeah, and I was thinking that seems like we're going in a direction that doesn't appear to be that extreme. That we have that kind of model as a front line of defense, but we don't have the we don't have it. We don't expect that to be universal. You know what I mean?
Yes.
We don't expect that to cover every case because it just doesn't cover every case. And so I was thinking that we might have a program. It could be a single program, but we identify care facilities that we have. Yeah, all these different care facilities, from daycare to hospital care or healthcare or whatever. And we have a need in some cases to provide for people who can't provide for themselves. And so, some people they need to be put in an asylum sort of situation, not in a in a sort of psych ward or prison or whatever, but in the care of people that would take care of someone who can't mentally be functioning. And we need a program of sorts that will have an actual person review the case and understand what is going on in this person's life and help them come out with the plan that works for them. We have a lot of different social programs that could be absorbed. Like, we could absorb a lot of different social programs into one of those. It's like you have your own personal life coach, I guess, assigned to you by the government. It could be like all kinds of different companies that provide these coaches, but the government provides a program by which to accredit healthcare places and or coaching and or whatever else. So I'm just thinking of distributed ways of doing it, decentralized ways of doing it.
Right. We're saying that there's a way to have regulation or have a system by which the government can essentially say this person's life is worth, whatever, $10,000 for their care a year for their care, and these are the services that we have approved that this person can go to for that care. And you're essentially combining a mix of government social welfare programs, but also
but you're a personal assistant.
Yeah.
That can tap funds.
Right.
That can come to a plan that's optimized for you.
Right.
Where we don't overspend necessarily or underspend depending on their ability to make decisions. But it again, it gives you a safety net so that you don't feel like you completely go out onto the street.
Right.
And I think everyone could be assigned a person like this,
But
because everyone has a situation that they might need an assistant.
well, the only problem with that is if everyone needs a person like that, that might be too large of a request, right?
Yeah.
To have each and every person have a life coach might be too large of a request to accomplish.
But it wouldn't be that they would be fielding your call at all times.
Sure.
But it would be someone that could be assigned to you that you could call.
Well, I was thinking instead of assignment, why not have it be you have an accredited person who can take money from a pool of money that is assigned to you, right? And you
use
say
the market.
Yeah, and use the market system to allow that to happen. And when your money runs out for that thing, if it runs out, then that life coach, they either start charging or whatever. But for bigger services, you would have maybe a bigger pool of money. Maybe there would be sort of a shared system. I don't know. But ultimately, we should be incorporating the market and not assigning people. Assigning people would be a very empire or a very sort of old school mindset.
We go round and around. Yeah, we try to correct some of these things, but yeah, it's hard to get off of the old mindset. Sure.
Well, and it's hard to construct a system that is socially fair while also trying to make it so that the ways that we interact or because we want to make something that it would be my goal to have a policy where no one is afraid of being being completely destitute and put on the streets. One of the things that happened in my life that was very powerful was that I was told by my parents that I'd always have a place that I could go, my old family home, and it was always acceptable that if I failed in so badly that I didn't have a place to go, I could always end up at my parents' house. And I recognize that there are some people who did not have that opportunity, who did not have that thing, and that knowledge that I could only fall so far gave me confidence to push further than I would have without it, right? Knowing that I could fall back to a thing with no shame.
And that actually opens up your opportunities if you're willing to take more risks.
Yes.
You have more opportunities you're willing to take, and quite a few of those, the risky ones, are the more beneficial ones.
Exactly. And so I want to see a social system where no one is ever put into the gutter, so to speak, and maybe even literally, where they can't find a place to go, where they don't know what to do. And I think the social good that comes from that far outweighs the cost that it would be. And let me go further. I am not saying that we should be paying people for this. I'm saying that I think the best way to go about it is to maybe build facilities or build places where people can go, asylums or sanctuaries where they can go and essentially and citizens can go, so first of all, that would be beyond so that they don't have the homeless care industry is kind of rough. And it doesn't necessarily put people on the right track. And there's a lot of things we can do to help people get out of this death spiral that can sometimes happen.
Certainly charities aren't going to help. I just want to say.
Oh yeah, no.
It's better to come up with a system that's actually effective.
Right, and that system is one of the things that government can do, and can actually do relatively effectively. It can make up for gaps in a capitalist system, which is what the original intent of the liberal system was about. The government was the thing that made up for the gaps in capitalism.
But what I see is that we've designed a lot of these systems in the past without the knowledge that there is this massive covert war going on.
That's true.
And so you don't really design a system to be battle tested, like literally, where you might have an enemy that tries to target the system.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of the reasons why we have this big problem with illegal immigration that causes so many stressors on undue stresses on the system that almost break it. The welfare system, if you have the ability to get minimal documentation, you could probably get on welfare as an illegal immigrant. I'm not exactly sure on this, but I'm willing to bet that it's not at all impossible to do. And with the recent changes in the law, I mean, illegal immigrants get health care. I think they get access to Obamacare, which is pretty impressive for how much that is a betrayal of the citizenry.
Yeah, Obama seemed to care about a lot of people, but he didn't care about Americans.
No, I'm pretty sure it kind of seemed like he thought Americans were spoiled and they deserved to have them taken down a peg, sort of thing.
He didn't even like American values.
No,
like, pretty much all of them. He wanted to centralize power and become a tyrant.
And the repercussions of that were I mean, the Biden story, I'm sure, happened with Obama's knowledge. Mm-hmm. I think Obama was complicit in that, and the Obama administration was complicit in that. Just seeing the corruption that was in that administration is mind-boggling. I'm pretty sure they were out for themselves. It almost is, hard to argue differently.
And when I say American values, I don't think they're arbitrary. I think they're defenses against an enemy.
Sure.
I think they are there, like the Constitution is a protection. It's a shield.
Yes.
So there, if you look at the patterns therein, what the laws are, you see how it attempts to shield us, the people, and It's usually a form of decentralization and empowering the individual.
Yes. The Constitution, particularly the First and Second Amendments, are all about decentralizing power from the government to the people. The freedom of the press, now we can talk about religion. Freedom of religion is an interesting one, and it's a protection of its own right, but the freedom of the press is the far more interesting and more vital one that allows people to say essentially anything without government censor.
Yeah, you are the press.
You are the press.
You are the press. We all are the press.
Yes.
Right now, it should be.
Right now, by making this video, I have joined the press.
Yeah. And now, you should be able to raise your voice.
Do I have journalistic integrity? That is debatable. But I am.
We're not putting together videos.
Yeah.
We're not keeping schedules.
I am part of the press by making this video.
That's all you need.
And by even contributing to, say, Twitter or Facebook, you are part of the press. You are one of the press by contributing, by adding to the scope of what is going on. So that is what the First Amendment.
You have your own opinions, and you can speak to them.
Yeah,
right? And other people can do the same.
Yes.
So we have a big perspective, big pile of different perspectives out there.
And that, if you understand the context of what they're saying with the freedom of the press, they're talking about the printing press, and that printing press context means they wanted anyone to say anything at all, up until a certain point about libel and slander. You can get into and argue that, or protected speech, which is like you can't say fire or scream fire in a firehouse, sort of thing, or in a theater, and cause a panic sort of thing. But
there are some special cases.
Yeah, absolutely. But that is the nuance of the situation, is that of course there's going to be some things where it's not necessarily always the best thing to do, but for the most part it's where we want to be. The Second Amendment allows the decentralization, and its purpose is the decentralization of the American military, essentially forming its own citizen military that far outstrips the American military in size, number, and available weapons. And it is why, for the last 200 years, the only people who have really been able to invade America was America in the Civil War.
Yeah, it can be really intimidating when every citizen is empowered,
Yes.
has a firearm, or is informed, well informed.
Well, or
there's
just
all
has
kinds
a
of ways.
firearm.
There's all kinds of different ways to empower
Yeah.
people, and we're talking about, I guess, two different layers of that. One is which is you're empowering them with ideas, and the other you're empowering them with weapons.
Yeah.
But there's many others, and I'm one to like to point out that ideas are the realm in which we want the conflict to stay with. Like we want the conflict to remain between ideas and not be manifest between people. But the guns are there in case that happens.
Right.
Because you got to handle every case. It's really important that you acknowledge we don't have we have a messy world, and all these different cases need to be accounted for and be planned for. So right now, it's like a lot of people think there's going to be some kind of civil war in the street. I don't think that's what's going to happen.
No, I think we both agree on that. I don't think a civil war is doable, simply because what's happening right now, the play that's being shown is really a small group of people who are causing unrest, who may or may not be paid to cause unrest, but a small group that is kind of like a revolving door. They just kind of keep cycling back in and out, in part because the cities that they are causing unrest in don't ever prosecute or charge these people with the rioting and that sort of stuff. We get some through federal agents, but there's enough of them that they can kind of just revolve around and seem like a bigger deal is happening right now than actually is happening. And they're trying to cause that civil war to happen, where eventually they're expecting a group of armed citizens who are fed up with them to fight them, right? That.
What do you mean? Can you be more specific about who they is and who?
Oh, sure. The people I'm talking about would be, you can call them Antifa, but they're essentially people who believe that the right way to go about the next course of action is a revolution to cause a new government to form that would be, I'm guessing, communist in nature. From what I've seen, that seems to be where it's heading. That seems to be what they're trying to achieve.
It seems to be the same template used everywhere.
Yeah, it's very it has been used many times before.
Well, they do it to encroach in a centralizing scheme.
Right.
So they start with whatever you got, and they try to convince you that democracy is a good thing, because everyone has a voice and people will buy into that. They don't realize that everyone's voice is not informed enough to policy decisions, and especially not collectively, where everyone's fragmented. We don't have a single view on anything. So democracy is not all that effective at doing what they purport it should be effective.
Which is why the United States is not a democracy.
They like to say it's a constitutional republic.
Yeah,
because that's the proper defense. A democracy is a slip and slide towards along their agenda. So they're trying to put in a wedge in the system.
The best government that
the Trojan horse
that the empire wants is essentially a dictatorship, where an oligopoly sort of thing, where there's a few small people at the top that kind of run everything, and everyone's in a hierarchy of people. They don't.
And they essentially have to trick people to get there.
Yeah,
because you can't just like move in and declare yourself king.
no, no one would accept it, and you'd be overthrown immediately if you were to move in and declare yourself, president for life. The idea that Trump was going to declare himself president for life was floating around for a while, and that is literally laughable. That I don't understand why that they would think that was even possible. That people would let him do
one of many bad predictions because their worldview is so broken.
Right. The idea that Antifa is in the sense this thing that is going to cause a whole new revolution and a whole new civil war that they'll eventually win is also laughable.
It's modeled after the Bolsheviks.
Yeah, they don't have enough power though, is the problem. The only reason they have any sort of quote power is because they're being released by the DA and no one is coming to actually shut them down. They could be shut down in almost an instant by a multitude of different organizations, but they are not. And the only one who should be shutting them down is not shutting them down. And any other organization that tries to shut them down might inflame the rest of the country, so they're going to step back and let it burn itself out, sort of thing. Now, that's the dangerous thing. That's kind of part of their plan. They're going to provoke and provoke and provoke until somebody comes along and starts to provoke back, so that they're looking for a dance partner that they can drive up the ideology so that effectively two big groups form that then fight. The fighting is what this empire wants. They want a full-on civil war, because when that happens, no matter what side wins, they will have more control over what happens next. Because
the fight is used as a precedent to roll in big changes.
Well, not only that, but they will back both sides. There will be enough money ties, because if you want to fight effectively, you gotta have funding. And where do you think that funding is going to come from? Well,
their solutions tend to also centralize things.
Yes.
And that's not a coincidence.
What I'm saying is that funding will be used as leverage to implement the solutions they want, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if you have the Bolshevik revolution, there's got to be someone at the top leading it, and that person at the top is going to start making decisions. And especially in like a revolutionary state where you have a great general, one of the prize generals of the American Revolution, George Washington, stepped down after 8 years because he understood the danger of setting that precedent of being the wartime general and the peacetime president. He did not.
It seems
want
like
that.
I want to go back to these agitators. The protests and the riots are generally it seems like two groups. You're either a sort of pro-socialism / communism kind of person, or you're an anarchist. And both of these seem to be cutouts of a particular worldview that protects the establishment. So they
hilariously so.
Hilariously,
yeah.
Because it's ironic, because anarchy is trying to dismantle that kind of establishment, but they end up going forward to do the establishment's dirty work.
Well, and communism as well. The communists, they want to see the big corporations fry too, as well as the anarchists. They're all about trying to make it so that the people are in charge again, sort of thing. The problem is the people shouldn't be in charge. As we talked about with democracy, it's the individuals that should have rights, not the people should be in charge. And there's an important distinction between that. You as an individual should be given the most amount of rights that you possibly can, but there are regulation, there are laws, there are things that should be in effect to prevent individuals from having too many rights that they abuse other individuals' rights. funnily enough,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
yeah, it is funny because the establishment does a lot of things that might get people upset or angry, and that might be the reason why you go out and protest. But you, by tearing something down, some part of the establishment, you're creating a sort of power vacuum for the establishment to move in
as long
again with something more
heinous.
Yeah, something worse.
Yeah.
And so you get this ratcheting up of control, which we've called the revolutionary cycle.
There's also the was it Hegelian dialectic?
Yeah, the dialectic that uses the cycle, the problem solving cycle, actually, to confuse people and make people want to go along with it because you think you're solving something. But you actually don't know the full situation. You don't realize that the enemy, the monster you're trying to fight, is actually not what you think it is. Or you just end up being a sort of a patsy to present a conflict for the establishment to solve. They roll in their solution, and you're just a part of the formula. You have to be careful about what you do because these people have been doing this for a very long time, and they have time-tested, battle-tested strategies for gaining control of things. And this is all over the world. These are the same people. They're coming in. They don't. These people that are essentially doing the establishment's dirty work on the street by rioting and whatever, they have their own local reasons for doing what they're doing, but they don't understand the broader picture. They don't understand the bigger war. They don't understand we're being infiltrated and we're being attacked.
And so these people might actually have good intentions and want to help, but ultimately are causing more harm than good because they don't see the bigger picture.
And that's where the media comes in.
Yeah. The media should be providing a bigger picture analysis of what's going on so that people don't feel that frustration in the same way. But instead, our media has been providing everything is bad, you should be revolting right now.
And the reason for that is they've centralized the media.
Yes.
If we decentralize the media where everyone has a voice, you wouldn't have this problem. Because you wouldn't have these people hearing the same falsehoods over and over again until they believe them.
Well, and one of the things that happened, though, is that the internet did that. Believe it or not, as we sit amidst the Twitter censorship and all of this, the internet caused a massive break in the media complex where the powers that be thought they could rely on the media being this main source of information for everyone for the rest of time. That wasn't true. And that was proven untrue in 2016 when Donald Trump got elected through memes. Us shitty little people, shitty common people, memed a president into office that was not supposed to happen. That was the power that the internet had. They can't get rid of the internet.
Yeah, the meme machine ended up taking control.
Yeah.
It's actually doing battle with the global establishment.
And they don't have control over the meme machine. Almost no one does. That is the interesting part. Really, you can affect it, but people themselves are what are generating it, and there's so many of us, and this is what happens with a distributed system. There's so many people there that the system is too complex to overwrite or have one central control that you flip a lever, and it's a far more robust, meaning far more resistant to being corrupted system.
They can't build tools fast enough to detect content.
Yeah.
So people are able to get around things. So the censorship ends up just mimetically spreading it faster because it's forbidden.
Yeah.
So we get this Streisand effect. So censorship shouldn't be something they employ. It's just something they know how to do, kind of. At
Well,
least they used to.
Well, they think that the censorship in theory should work, but as we say in engineering, in theory is not the same as in practice.
It's really not going to work, and maybe they even understand that it's not going to work on some level.
Yeah.
Things are different these days, but I think maybe they don't understand it, but they don't know what else to do.
Well, I will say I think that it has worked for them in the past. I think there's a level of censorship that is allowable by the giant meme machine that people don't really necessarily care about. When they got rid of Alex Jones off of Twitter and YouTube and all the places that he was on, everyone was like, okay. I mean, there was outrage, but I don't know if it was the level of outrage of removing an official article from a news outlet.
Yeah, they censored the speaker of the White House press secretary.
Yeah, and
right?
and the House Judiciary GOP, they censored that. It's a level that is crazy, and this is where we're getting back to sort of the government conversation. This is why the government exists. If Twitter was just a private entity with no rules, censorship would be 100% fine. In fact, this is also interesting that the government both helped create Twitter and also is going to lay the hammer down on Twitter. I think it's pretty inevitable that Twitter's lifespan is only going to exist, and YouTube and Facebook, their lifespan is their time is running out. They will either have to decide whether or not they will be a censorious publisher or they will be a platform. And I think that's what's going to happen, is there's going to be a distinction between being a platform and a publisher, and that's going to be made clear. And there's no way that
you can't be both, and we should enforce this.
Yes, and yeah, and that's the government's fault. The government's fault was they created this special Section 230 that allowed a legal distinction.
It actually makes a lot of sense. Because you want to protect a person's ability to speak out,
right?
But if they're speaking as a sort of on behalf of someone else,
yes,
then there's a special consideration. Are they speaking for themselves,
right?
Where they've absorbed someone else's voice, but they're now speaking as themselves, or which is which? That's the publisher.
That's the publisher.
That's the publisher. Or are they not? Are they just a pipe for someone else's voice, and they don't modify it at all? They just amplify or whatever. They give them tools to speak. Then that's a platform. So it makes total sense that they need to decide which one they want to be, and they don't get the protections of the other side. So all of these big tech titans like Twitter, Google, YouTube, Facebook, they're acting like they are publishers, but they don't want to take the liability of being a publisher. So they get to have their cake and eat it too. They want to be the publisher, but also in censored stuff and control the flow of information. But also they want to be seen legally as a platform, which gives them these protections against being sued as a publisher. So if I wanted to, I can sue a news article for slander if they were posted something slanderous. I can sue a news article if they posted something that was illegal, right? Like if you have, there's legal liability if you're the main thing. So I can not necessarily sue, but I can tip off the FBI, or I can get in contact with law enforcement if I see something has been posted illegally, saying like child pornography or all sorts of any of that protected speech we were talking about earlier. If they are if they are a publisher, they are liable for that stuff. So that is an extremely important distinction. If Twitter wants to survive, they have to be a platform. Otherwise, they will have to censor everyone down or be threatened with legal action, both civilly, which is something that no one can control.
So civil lawsuits are special because they don't happen via the Justice Department. They happen via citizen action. And if
sorry, go ahead.
And so if Twitter censors or blocks things and gets into the position where they're classified as a publisher, they are suddenly in a world of hurt because nothing can protect them.
Yeah. People like to say that they make their own decisions over their own platform because they're private companies. The thing is that they are being influenced by an external party, a third party, and they're all being influenced by this third party. We can call them the global establishment or the various intelligence agencies or China or whoever. But they're being influenced as a block. They're under marching orders. All of them are under their own marching orders, and they mostly orchestrate together. That's why you get purges across platforms at the same time. So they all march together. They're not independent companies. They're just sort of acting like it, kind of, on this. I mean, they are, I guess. But they also are not in a significant way. And they also do things like interfere with the election process.
They can. And this is and they have been. And this is one of the other interesting things that has recently happened with the Federal Election Commission, the FEC, starting the GOP requesting a look into Twitter's Twitter's censorship of the New York Post article. It might fall under a in-kind donation, meaning if I provide value as a corporation to a political official in any way, the statute is in any way, if I provide value, I am contributing a donation, which is illegal. A corporation cannot contribute to a corporation directly to a political official. So as a corporation, I cannot contribute anything to a political individual. If I do that, if I do, say, censor a damning article from my platform, that represents an in-kind donation, meaning I provided value to the Biden campaign, and that is illegal. And we'll see what happens with it. It's funny, one of the things that's frustrating about this era is that we don't see a lot of vindication for the things we get upset about. The politicians have learned, it seems, to just let it blow over and hide underneath a rock for a little while, and then the anger subsides and nothing has been done. And I've been thinking of how to combat that. One of the things I've been trying to do is call my representatives more and get in contact with them and tell them the concerns and grievances that I'm having and not letting up, particularly in this instance. I've been calling my representatives about the fact that Twitter has been censoring and that I do not want that behavior to stand. And that's, however small that action is, it at least is something that I can do. And I think we got to start thinking about the small things that we can do to better our society as a whole that we've been negligent on because we, for whatever reason, I haven't ever called my congressman before, a few days ago. So that was negligent of me. And I think that we should start as a society being a little bit more on the ball and on top of our representatives and holding them to account to a task for their actions. In part, if the politicians don't hear you, they don't have any reason to, do anything about what's happening. They haven't heard from you. So, well, I think this was a fantastic talk. Do you think it's a good time to wrap it up?
Definitely. It's longer than we normally do, but we've been kind of all over the place talking about things.
Well, I think we can probably segment it a little bit, and we can have a nice little, extended conversation. It's definitely in the podcast range. So, maybe we might do more of these. We'll see. Comment and like and subscribe or whatever the hell people do nowadays. And we'll catch you on the flip side. The Epistemologers out.